Joining us, as he usually does every Thursday, but today it's Wednesday because he's got a meeting tomorrow, is Craig Stobo, our resident business, economic and commercial commentator. Welcome to the show, Craig. Thank you very much for joining us a bit earlier, mate. Much appreciated.
That's fine, Michael. Thank you. Good to hear from you.
Hey, listen, Fletcher buildings, mate, they're iconic. Fletchers always have been. We grew up with them. Been a part of the landscape ever since, gosh, I think the Great Depression when they were formed. You don't often see a chairman and a chief executive resign at the same time, do you?
No, it's very unusual. The result was a poor result, a net profit after tax of minus 120 mil, unresolved problems with Puhoi, Warkworth, unresolved problems with the plumbing division in Perth, trade link business in Australia not performing to expectations, litigation, or not so much litigation as completion of insurance discussions, negotiations with the International Convention Centre. It just adds up to a lot of various risks in the business that, from a shareholder's perspective, has resulted in the suspension or the axing of the interim dividend, and no shareholder likes that, and I'm sure Bruce Hassel and the CEO would be not wanting to have this outcome occur, and we're not inside the boardroom or in senior management, so don't exactly know the issues that were discussed on the way through, but the outcome is the outcome, and they've decided to do what might be called an appropriate thing given the circumstances, and let someone else come in as CEO very shortly, and the chair to focus on risks of the business, and particularly from the outside, contractual risks.
Yeah, I'm interested because the potential seems to be there to, in actual fact, be much, much worse. There's a couple of things that rise out of this, but you've been inside boardrooms, you've chaired boards, you chair boards. How do you get to the stage where Fletcher Building has got? They seem to have made a series of disastrous decisions. It's not just one, but they seem to be all compounding, whether it's the what seems almost dereliction of duty to do with the New Zealand International Convention Centre project, or going to Australia, buying up a plumbing firm called TradeLink, $1 million or a good part of that through that form as well. How does this happen?
Well, it's a function of, you know, the business leadership and their desire for growth, as opposed to a farming business with a steady dividend flow coming off that. So the International Convention Centre, I think, is a little bit more problematic because that was that outlook has been compromised by a devastating fire, don't forget. So I think that could be put to one side per se. But when you look at the work that they're doing, you kind of think, have they asked the right questions of management around risks in the business and returns for those risks? So if you were more defensive in your outlook, you may not have gone into those businesses. So it comes down to the types of questions you ask around the board table of management and their response, and your kind of mission or your vision or your goal for your shareholders. So, you know, shareholders clearly in this case are going to punish the stock price, and they have done for cessation of dividends. You've got a lot of people, KiwiSaver and Direct, who are relying on dividends, and clearly they've got their execution wrong. So may well have had the right, being, you know, playing in the right paddock, but the execution of those strategies has not worked out, and that probably goes to contractual issues. But I'm on the outside, I'm not inside that boardroom, but what you want around the boardroom is collegial but tough questioning amongst each other and with the management. So we don't know exactly what happened in the boardroom, but the results speak for themselves.
Craig, and I have this perception. I'm not a corporate man. I'm not a commercial man. I don't have the benefit of your vast experience in this issue. But the number of times I've watched New Zealand companies that seem to be very robust here and go-getterish and successful, cross the Tasman and fail is extraordinary. What's the problem?
Well, it's that expansion mindset constrained by the size of the New Zealand economy. So we'll leap across the Tasman and have a crack at Ansett as Air New Zealand did. There are other companies that have gone to Australia and found a graveyard, moving to South America, expansion into US and Canada, in the case of Michael Hill. So you can kind of go think to yourself, is there a better way we can deliver outcomes for shareholders rather than taking the business into what is a very different economic and regulatory environment such as is Australia. Australia is a very different country. In fact, every state of Australia is slightly different. So you just don't operate in Australia the way you operate in New Zealand. So you have to think very carefully about, well, what sort of risks do you want to take for your shareholders that are conscious, good quality risks? Going to another country may not be the best outcome, clearly, for shareholders. There may be other ways to deliver returns that are different from your existing business, but it might mean entering into a new industry in a different part of the market here, or it might involve shrinking the business so that the outcome is far better dividends for shareholders, because you might be reducing the size of your balance sheet and getting rid of some debt. So people don't like, if you like, shrinking, but that is a strategy that might be a better one than trying to expand into Australia.
No, listen, it's just a tale of woe, basically, when New Zealand firms go across the Tasman. I'm just always stunned. Anyhow, this last one's really interesting too. Just to explain to listeners, they lost their money with this group called TradeLink to do primarily with allegations in West Australia, as I understand it. So you're talking about central, of a product that they made, a pipe put into new houses called Iplex Profit, that failed, and the allegations from both the West Australian government regulators and those is that was a flaw in the product that Fletcher Building were providing. Fletcher Building have said, no, it's nothing to do with us, it's to do with really bad, useless Australian tradesmen. They're not going to win that argument, are they?
Well, that's the contest, is between installation failures and manufacturing defects, and Fletcher's is saying it's not a manufacturing issue, it's an installation issue. Having said all of that, that business has been impaired by $120 million, and they're now looking to exit the business.
Yeah.
So, end of story.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Listen, the other thing that I was intrigued by yesterday, and you and I have talked about this privately, God, over decades, Craig, when we get together, and that is over the cost of superannuation, which now exceeds $16 billion. Gosh, you'll be qualified for it soon, Craig, I was just thinking.
Cheeky monkey.
Yeah, well, yes, I know. I was just thinking, oh, wait on, mate. But, of course, it is absurd, isn't it, that somebody with your business acumen, and I would imagine personal savings and investments, I know you well, you're not a silly man with money, you're going to be paid superannuation once you get the age of 65. Do we need to look at some form of income and asset testing as we go forward? Or is the Retirement Commissioner Jane Wrightson right? As long as all the parties sign up for it, we can keep the age at 65 and it can be universal.